Hello, good afternoon. My name is Todd Trinan, and I am with Ysoft, and I just want to thank everyone for joining today so that we can share some information with you about how to engage students through remote learning, on-site learning as it relates to 3D print subjects and 3D learning. So I'll go ahead and get started. And one of the things that I want to first say is that no one likes a lot of PowerPoint, and that includes myself. So this is not going to be a presentation full of PowerPoint. We're going to do a lot of live demonstration for you, so you can actually see what the online academy looks like and how you would utilize it in your school. I ask you to please submit any questions that you have in the chat section, and then we will get to those at the end. So let's just briefly summarize the topics that we're going to talk about today. Number one is we're going to focus on what can you teach with 3D printing concepts. Secondly, we'll talk a little bit about how can this 3D printing curriculum be adapted to every classroom. And what I mean by that is not just the traditional classroom, but how could you support remote learners with 3D printing concepts? And then we'll spend most of our time in the online academy, the BE3D Online Academy. We're going to look at things like the online resources, the model databases, and the lesson plans. And we'll actually dive down deep into one of the lesson plans called the Da Vinci Bridge. Then we'll discuss how do you get started and what's included in the entire BE3D print solution. And then lastly, and this is my cheap way of getting all of you to stay till the end, is anyone who stays all the way to the end will draw a name, and then we'll send you some free filament, a large roll of filament, and we'll get in touch with you to figure out what color you like and make sure we get your contact information for shipping. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Teaching with 3D, really the why and the how. So what we've learned is that teaching with 3D printing concepts really helps to promote active learning. It brings the subjects to life. In other words, it holds the students' attention because they are interested in it and they absorb and retain the information, which is really what you want as educators, right? As opposed to just listening to a lecture. They learn with hands-on learning, right? It's a powerful technique when you can teach them something and then they can turn around and actually create something based on what they've learned. Secondly, it encourages creative thinking because they're learning through discovery. Discovery learning involves problem solving through situations by doing something. 3D printing encourages students to learn by innovating and going through trial and error. You know, as they're trying to work through a problem, a challenge, and create something, oftentimes it's not going to work. And then they work through it and they figure out what they did wrong. And they want that object that they're going to print to look right and to work. So they work through the issues and the reasons why they made the mistakes the first time. Also, what we found is that a lot of times these concepts that are taught through 3D learning end up being turned into careers because 3D printing opens up new opportunities in areas that students may have previously considered boring or really just didn't have the interest in, especially when it comes to STEAM subjects like science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. It makes it fun when they actually create something from which they learned. Now, that doesn't come without its challenges, right? A lot of teachers, educators have a lot of great ideas about how to maybe incorporate some 3D printing concepts into their learning, but it's difficult to put into action, right? Because you have to create a lesson plan. And how do you create a lesson plan around some of these complex topics? Especially when you have STEAM subjects, because that adds another layer of complexity when you're trying to put together a lesson plan, especially with students who may not have a natural aptitude for some of the subjects that you're teaching, whether it's math or physics or whatever it might be. And then lastly, typically when you try to look online for some resources to help you put together those lesson plans, they're pretty light on content. And they also assume that you are a 3D printing expert already. So therefore, we developed the BE3D Academy. And thanks to our comprehensive research of the 3D print curriculum market, as well as collaborating with educators like yourselves, we developed this academy to be intuitive, very easy to use, and it's designed for first-time or experienced teachers and students with 3D printing. So you do not have to be an expert in 3D printing to use the academy with either our printer or any printer. So this was not developed in a vacuum, right? It was not a bunch of Wysoft employees sitting around saying, we think students would learn with this particular concept. It was a collaboration between outside consulting companies and educators to make sure that the right ITSE standards and regulations and everything that go into putting together a proper curriculum and a lesson plan were put into these lessons. So the intention is to create a single place where you can get the lesson plans, the databases of models to print, all the print resources you need, like filament, etc., and the entire print solution, right, which includes the printer itself. So we're going to dive into the Academy in just a moment, but I want to just touch also on how things are changing with respect to in-person classroom versus remote learning, whether it's traditional school or summer schools or homeschooling. With the technological progress in education, not only is the traditional classroom changing, but in some cases it's being replaced by virtual classrooms. So what that means is there's a variety of online programs that schools and universities are adopting to try to educate students who aren't necessarily on campus. But what happens sometimes is these remote learning scenarios can miss out on some of the engagement that in-person learning delivers, especially when it comes to these STEAM subjects, which is really why getting them engaged in the learning helps a great deal as opposed to just sitting in front of their laptop listening to a lecture. They are learning, of course, but that they have a task to complete that reinforces that learning. So that is why the Online Academy is developed to provide out-of-the-box lesson plans for you. This is not something that you have to develop. They've already been developed. You just implement them into your curriculum. Second, there's no experience required. You could have never printed a 3D thing in your life, and this is designed for you to learn how to implement the content and to learn how to use the printer. As a matter of fact, I was new to 3D printing myself about 9 months ago, and my company was nice enough to send me one of the 3D printers, and I figured out how to use it within just a day or two. And I did all that remotely because of all the resources that are available to me on the Academy to set it up and to learn how to use it. My 11-year-old son also dove in, and he, I would say, is an expert at using the printer. He knows how to send the files to the printer, knows how to prepare the printer for the object to be printed. So he was a good test case for me in, do these resources really work? Also, remote students can access these resources from anywhere. So you as the educator can simply access the site, download the models, send all the information that's needed to the students through your Google Classroom sharing tools or whatever you might use, so that they have access to all the materials that they need to be able to work with you remotely through these lessons and then to ultimately actually produce the end item, which is something that can be printed. And again, I keep reinforcing this learning by doing, but it really does engage the student when they are producing something based on the concepts that they've learned. And then lastly, especially for a remote learner, to get that ultimate satisfaction of seeing what they printed, they could submit the file remotely, and then you as the teacher could queue it up to print. So they can either print it when they get to school, or it could be printed for them and maybe shipped to them or mailed to them as the printer would typically be at the school. So there's all kinds of ways to sort of close the loop and make sure that the student gets the 3D printed object in their hands. So just lastly, before we dive into the Academy, I'll tell you another little story. During the heat of the first wave of COVID-19, I was really proud to be part of this company because the 3D printer they sent me, they said, you know what, Todd, go ahead and use it to print face shields for any local hospitals and clinics. And I learned a great deal about 3D printing through that process. And I can tell you that it was very gratifying rather. My family and I really dove in, and we produced over 170 face shields for local hospitals and clinics just from my one 3D printer. And as a company, we produced over 40,000 using all of our 3D printers to distribute around the world. So it was really great to learn how to use it, but then turn that learning into something that I could actually use to affect someone's life. And this was not a moneymaker. You know, we put the instructions on our website for anyone to use to be able to download the model, use on their own 3D printer to help their own communities. Okay, let's now dive in to the online academy, which is really the heart of what we're talking about today. So we're going to go ahead and dive in specifically to the DaVinci Bridge lesson plan. So let me go ahead and just switch right on over there. And so now I am in the BE3D Academy, which is just BE3D Academy.wysoft.com. You can go there right now if you like, BE3D Academy.wysoft.com, and you'll be able to browse it yourself and you can access free content. Now I'm logged in as me and I have access to premium content. So let's start with the lesson plans. So if I click on the lesson plans, there are oodles and oodles of lesson plans here. I just simply click on the load more at the bottom and more show up. Now we are specifically going to go into the DaVinci Bridge lesson plan. Now, I'm not going to go through it quite yet because I do want to highlight a few other resources that you have available, but we'll come back to this in just a moment. But this is where I would access it and get all the resources. Let's just step over to the model databases for a moment. So the model databases are where you can download any of the predefined models that are loaded so that your students can simply just print things to have fun, to kind of get an idea of how to use the printer. And again, there are oodles and oodles and oodles and oodles of these models. There's the DaVinci Bridge again. So if I click on that one, I can download the model directly to send it to the printer. I can copy the link to send it to someone else to download, or I can go directly to the lesson plan where we were earlier. And it gives you some useful information, such as how long is it going to take for this to print, in this case, 7 hours and 10 minutes, and I'm going to use 20 meters of filament, right? So it gives you some data that you know how long it's going to take to print and how much filament you're going to use before you start it. Okay, the other section I want to show you are the print resources. So this is where I came a lot when I was first learning to use the printer. I'm going to play a video for you here in just a moment, but I just want to highlight some of the resources that are here. This video we're going to play, which is a great overview of the printer. There's also, how do you use the printer? How do you prepare something to be printed? How do you use the slicing software, which is this software right here. And this is the software you use when you're done downloading the model or creating it. You get it ready to send to the printer, and you make sure everything looks good, and then you simply just prepare it for print and send it to the printer, right? So that software, how to use it, how to troubleshoot if you get jams and filament. Here are the downloadable files so that you can install the slicer software, either for Mac or for Windows. A lot of video case studies, written case studies of how other schools are using these solutions. So it's a really nice resource page for you. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to start a video for you. Give me just a moment here and I will cue that up. Let me move this over here and maximize this. And
3D printing technology is revolutionizing education and inspiring young minds around the world. Not only is it an immersive learning tool that promotes active learning, engages students and encourages creative thinking, it also allows them to better grasp complex concepts and provides important skills they'll need in their future careers. But most do-it-yourself 3D kits and off-the-shelf 3D printers have not been designed for education and are not safe for students. They contain open chassis, heated components and fast-moving mechanical parts that can cause injury when accidentally touched. There is also no way to secure the prints. That's why we've created Ysoft BE3D ED, the first 3D printing solution designed for education. Designed with safety first in mind, ED has enclosed chassis to keep students of all ages safe and provides protection from heat, cables and moving parts during printing. Its printing material PLA filament is bioplastic and does not produce volatile compounds, making it kind to both students and the environment. ED is simple to use and can be easily managed and maintained by your school. It provides security, as the printer doors only open to the rightful job owner by requiring users to enter their credentials or use their student ID, meaning the printer doesn't need to be locked away and can be placed anywhere on the school campus for easy access. Best of all, the ED solution includes the 3D printer, layering software, filaments, 3D print management software and BE3D Academy. Teachers can access BE3D Academy, an online library that provides all the materials such as 3D model files, videos and teaching aids you'll need to provide hands-on lessons for STEAM subjects, science, technology, engineering, art and math, allowing you to illustrate difficult concepts, enhance interactive learning and drive class engagement. For the only safe and easy-to-use 3D printing solution that enables schools to effectively manage and control 3D printing with 3D print management software. Choose Ysoft BE3D ED.
okay, great. Hopefully that video gave you a really good understanding of what the printer is like and how students can use it and its safety aspects. So I found that pretty useful when I got started. So I'm going to now continue on and show you some additional areas of the site. And just then we'll dive into the DaVinci lesson plan so you can kind of see how you would actually use one of these lessons to teach your students. So the last section I'll show you here is just if you want more information about what is included in the bundles, we call them, simply click on the Explore the Education bundles, and it gives you a general idea of the different bundles that we provide. So they're mostly the same. There are some small differences in terms of one bundle might have a few more licenses than the other, and one bundle might have a little bit more starter filament than the other. But for the most part, they're consistent. So we just sort of bundle them. If you're a smaller school, maybe you want to start here versus a larger school. But all of the bundles include 3 years exclusive access to the premium lessons when you buy one of these bundles. And if you're interested in more information, you can simply click on Request a Quote, and of course, fill out all the information, and somebody will get in touch with you immediately to answer any questions that you have. Now let's step back over to the lesson plan. And let me just make sure 100%, yep, that I'm sharing monitor 2, good, okay. So let's dive into the DaVinci Bridge. So the first thing you'll do is download the lesson resources. This gives you everything you need in one zip file. Now I've already taken the liberty of downloading them for you to save time. And when you download them, you get something that looks like this. When you unzip the file, you get all the models that are included. So we've got 3 STL files that are part of this lesson. We have the curriculum, the lesson plan, a presentation, print instructions on how to actually submit it to the printer, a complete walkthrough, and a worksheet. So let's take a look at the lesson plan. So the lesson plan steps you through step by step in terms of how you're going to teach this course. So step one, use the presentation that's included. Okay, so let's go to the presentation. So the presentation is pretty short, but it's kind of a starter. Okay, so we're going to ultimately construct this Da Vinci Bridge. First, let's learn a little bit about this individual, Leonardo da Vinci. Who was he? What was he about? More importantly, what were some of his accomplishments and what did he build? Well, one of the things he built was this bridge that didn't require any nails, screws, or ropes. Well, how did he do that? Right? Well, we're going to learn exactly how that bridge is held together. Right? So what do you need? Well, you need the beams that are in the models that you're going to print out first. And then you're going to work together in constructing it. And then you're going to do some load bearing and see how much weight you can put on it and so forth. There's even a quiz included in here where you can stimulate the students with some questions to get them thinking. And then lastly, the challenge is, okay, you've done it with the model that was provided for you. Now you're going to go into a Tinkercad application and you're going to design these pieces yourself to the right dimensions and then hope that it comes out the same way with the CAN model that was already provided for you, right? So that steps you through the lesson as you go through, right? So I kind of got ahead of myself a little bit, but basically you're going to build the bridge, do the load capacity testing. Then you're going to design your own models using Tinkercad, right? Then you're going to do the load bearing competition on that, and then some self-evaluation and feedback. And then all the while, students have a worksheet that they can use as they're going through and documenting the data as they're building their models to make sure that they're capturing the information accurately and is it consistent with the the length and the density of those that were already produced. So it's basically designed to give you and your students a complete walkthrough. When you go to do the Tinkercad, basically it's going to walk you through how to start building the models inside of that application. Step one, change the dimensions. Step two, rotate the cylinder. Step three, start cutting out the notches in the cylinders and so on, right? Align the cutouts. So it really, again, you do not have to be an expert in this, but it does teach you the basics of how to use the Tinkercad tool so that you can start to build your model databases. Okay, so I wanted to give you a deeper dive into the lesson plan, the documents that are included, and how you would implement this in your class. So essentially what you're teaching here is, in this particular one, some mathematics and some design and technology. It gives you information about the level, the grade level that this is applicable to, as well as it tells you the duration of the course. So lesson one is 50 minutes and lesson two is another 50 minutes and about 2 hours of print time. You can play a video for your students to give them an overview of what this particular lesson is going to be about. You can review the objectives with them, just make sure you know what tools and equipment you need. So in particular, we'll give you everything you need, except for when they go to design the cylinders themselves. They will need to download an application which is free called Tinkercad. And Tinkercad is used quite a bit through a lot of these lessons. And then a video showing them how to use Tinkercad, right? There's the walkthrough, but here's another video showing them how to begin designing these cylinders on their own. Right, so all the tools that you need as an educator and as the students need to be able to work through this lesson plan. Okay, so we're almost done, but I hope that gives you a good idea of the application of a lesson plan and how you can use it to teach different concepts, and that all the materials that you need are right there. Okay, so let's step back into the presentation. And I just want to finish up with talking a little bit about what's included in the entire solution. So in the whole print ecosystem, you have the Online Academy, which we just went through, and that is an academy that's constantly growing. So we add about 5 new lessons a quarter, and we're constantly collaborating with educators like yourselves and our consultants to say, which concepts would students want to see in that academy and would help them learn the concepts the best. In addition to the academy, we do include, as I mentioned, a healthy starter pack of filaments. Also, we include a 3D print management solution, which was covered in the video. So basically, this is a world's first, where we include a full print management solution with our print platform, which allows students to submit jobs from anywhere and then go get the job when they're ready. So they simply walk up to the device, identify themselves with a PIN number, a user ID and a password or a card, and it will recognize, oh, here's the print job that you sent over to print. Is this the one you want? Or maybe they submitted several jobs and they can pick and choose from different jobs that they've submitted. It also provides tracking. So you as an administrator or an educator can go back in and run reports to see how many students are actually printing to the 3D printer. Who are they? What are they printing? How much filament are they using? And then lastly, if that concept is appealing to you as a school where you like the ability to track student printing, whether it's on a 3D or a 2D printer, this same software integrates with your traditional 2D multifunction devices and printers as well. And then the D control layer software that I showed you earlier, where you actually stage the job once it's complete and then submit it to the printer, that's included. And then the printer itself, which is a PLA filament 3D printer with a fully enclosed chamber with electromagnetic doors that lock for child safety, and also 2 basically pads where you print upon. One is glass and one is flexible. So you have a choice of what type of print pad you would like to use. So just as we kind of round it out, we talked about the bundles. And I already articulated this, but again, there are different bundles for small schools, large schools, and even a starter pack with some of the key differences just being the number of licenses and the amount of filament. But again, a reminder that they all come with 3 years access to the premium lessons. Okay, so before we wrap up, I just want to impart upon you that Ysoft is a global organization with offices in 16 countries, and we've partnered with many of our resellers around the world. So there's somebody always to support you in your time zone and your language. We've actually deployed about over 400 of these printers so far, and we've started establishing a reference school network. So if you do acquire a printer and you'd like to join our reference school network, you'll be able to collaborate with all the other schools. And what happens is they collaborate with each other and say, you know what, our students are using it in this way, or our students are using it in this way. And oh, by the way, we'd like to see more content focused on X. And we take that feedback from our reference schools and we use it as ideas for new content, or use it as ideas for ways to improve our printers. So, as I mentioned earlier, for those of you that stayed all the way till the end, we will be reaching out to you to get your contact information. We have your email address so that we can ship you a filament, but more importantly, ask you which color you would prefer. So now that we have reached the end, it's time for questions and answers. So I'm just going to hop over to the question and answers section and see which questions we have. Okay, looks like the first question is, how often are new lessons developed? So that's a great question. New lessons are created typically a new 5 group of lessons is implemented each quarter. So about every 3 months, we will deploy 5 new lessons. And again, that's done in collaboration with other educators and our consultants that we work with. So excellent question. The next question is, how can I order additional filament? Well, we do sell through our reseller networks. So any of our resellers can order more filament through us and ship it to you. So the same source where you buy the printer, you can also buy the filament from us. Now, you don't have to. You can get PLA filament from anywhere that you so choose. So as long as it meets the right dimensions and it's PLA, you can use it with our printers. We do have another question. Where do you get your inspiration for new lessons? So as mentioned earlier, we do collaborate with educators. So these lessons are not drawn up, in the Ysoft office. They are actually given to us from other students, other educators, and consultants that we collaborate with. We actually did a contest where we reached out to a lot of our reference schools and said, we'd like your students to give us some ideas about content. And we are actually going to be incorporating many of those ideas into our next batch of content. As a matter of fact, one student said, I'd like to learn more about the phases of the moon, right? So I believe that's going to be in one of our new lesson plans where you can actually 3D print the different phases of the moon and learn about that. Let's see, we do have another question. Do the students download these materials themselves from their own account on the website, or do the teachers need to share the resources? So the teachers are the ones with access to the academy, and the teachers will make the resources available to the students through your normal tools that you would use to disseminate information out to the students, Google Classroom and Dropbox, or whatever you might use. So great question. Another question, does the D control software support Windows and Mac? Yes, both. If you recall, when I was on the resources site, you can download the slicer software for either Windows or Mac. So that is another great question. Here we have another question, is the printer safe even for kids? So the printer is absolutely safe for kids. That was one of the core principles in our design, is to make sure that the door locked. So all of the components inside, the elements that heat up to liquefy the filament, any moving parts are all inside that locked door. And it doesn't begin heating up until the door is locked. And it actually goes through a cool down process before the door can be unlocked. So absolutely, it is safe for kids. Okay, we have another question. Will your software work with Chromebooks? So the slicer software is for Windows or Mac. You could certainly reach the Academy on Chromebooks, absolutely. But in order to submit the job using the slicer software, it would need to be a Macintosh or a Windows PC. So those are all the questions that I see. I do see a question mark next to one of the participants' names, but I did not see that you typed a question in the chat section. So I'll give you a moment to go ahead and type that question in. Since everyone's muted, you won't be able to ask live, but if you can click on the little down arrow in the chat section, and then that's where you can type in your question. Oh, maybe it's in the questions pane.
Yes, you answered it already.
Did I answer it already? Okay, got it. Got it. Okay, well, if there are no further questions, then I greatly appreciate your time today. Again, we will reach out to you if you're the winner of the filament, and we hope to hear from you and work with you soon. Hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you very much.